All right, let's get this started. Aha. Okay, this is an unplanned chat. I was just spruiking our new campaign to ADHTV, which you'll be able to see this evening. You tune in to Daisy Cousins' show on ADHTV, and I thought I should get out there and spruik it to whoever was willing to listen to me on social media. So I don't think this video is going to stick around. I just thought I would try speaking directly to the world and see how this works. So this is tuning simulcast at the moment to the ATA's Facebook, to the ATA's Australian Taxpayers Alliance, Facebook and YouTube, and it's going to my personal Twitter because ATA doesn't have the premium Twitter, so I couldn't send it there. If you are watching along on one of those, then feel free to chuck in a comment. I'll be able to see them as you go. I've also tried to put up on all three of those locations, whether you're on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter, the link to be able to come in here and join me. So if there's something here you like or dislike, then come and yell at me or shower me in praise or whatever you want to say. And always so we can just talk about anything since this is unscripted and somewhat unplanned. But the purpose that I showed up was to see if anyone would indulge me in being able to talk about our new campaign, the ATA's new campaign about the Queensland election. Now, there's a Queensland election. It's coming up on the 26th of October. If you've been watching it, you may have noticed that it's about nothing so far. I mean, if you like politics, then there's plenty of politics being played in an election, as you'd expect. If you like policy, politics is becoming somewhat frustrating. The serious policy debate is really being put on the side. It's something you have to pretend to do, so you have a thick document so you can wave it at people and say, oh, look, we have policies, just please don't read them because that's not really the point of an election anymore. The Labor Party is just doing cynical handouts, desperately trying to buy their way back into popularity. Probably not going to work. The Liberal National Party just giving vague motherhood statements as a small target strategy, hoping that they'll just slide into government. That looks like it probably will work. And that's great. Maybe those are the best two strategies for both sides to play politically. But for us poor schmucks on the sideline who care about public policy, it is a very frustrating election to watch. So the ATA has put forward a campaign trying to outline some substantive and yet pragmatic and affordable tax changes that would make a difference, that would help push the state in a better direction without breaking the bank. And we think we've got a few of them. They're scrolling along the bottom. So I just wanted to quickly jump on this live stream to talk some of them through with you, the viewing public. So let me just check to see whether this is streaming. It looks like it is streaming to YouTube and Facebook, and I can't tell whether this is on Twitter. Ah, yes, there it is. So here is the write-up we have at the ATA's page. It's taxpayers.org.au slash QLD tax. If you go there, you'll find this page, but I've just got it here, so we'll be able to read it through together if I can work out how to bring it up. There we go. So cut these taxes, a campaign for a better Queensland. And these are, there's four ideas. There's four tax cuts in here. Each of them quite achievable. Each of them would do something good for the state or for the citizens of the state, and yet none of them are going to break the bank. And they're quite logical. They're quite fair-minded. These are things that major parties should be able to do. If you've heard of me over the last couple of decades, you'd be aware that I've played minor party politics, sometimes exploring the ideas that I think are the first best, but might not be politically achievable. And I enjoy doing that, and I still do sometimes. But there's another game here, which is to play what are the steps forward that would be achievable by a major party. And these four policies are very much within that. They are within the Overton window, to use the parlance. These are things that the major parties should be able to get behind. They take the country in a better direction, and I think they'll be popular too. So let's run through them here. The first one we've got is to make car registration fees permanently lower. Now, the Labor government in their last budget, they announced a string of handouts, quite cynical handouts, trying to buy their popularity back. A lot of them were quite bad policy on the face of it. One of them wasn't, I thought. So this one, they introduced a cut to car rego fees, 20% across the board for cars. It didn't include trucks. And the problem with that policy was that it was temporary, so it's one-off. Now that's very cynical or Machiavellian politics, in that they'll probably lose this election, and then when the Liberal Nationals come in, the Liberal Nationals will have to be responsible for seeing these rego fees go back up next year. So that's probably the politics behind Labor's decision there, which is, it's dastardly in a kind of genius, evil genius way. But the Liberal Nationals have a way out of it: make them permanent. This was a good policy to cut rego fees. I mean, they're too high. They just sting people from being able to drive a car, and a lot of people need that to be able to get around. If you're not an inner city type, and most people aren't, then you still are, most people, reliant on cars. And this is just the rego fees is just another little revenue raiser, another little sting that doesn't need to be there and can be cut without breaking the bank. Right? This really doesn't blow a hole in the Queensland budget. So they've introduced it for 1 year, make it permanent. Small, bite size, helps people with cost of living, can be done. So that's the suggestion here, and that would be an extra $85 in your pocket if you have a small car, up to $173 in your pocket if you have a big car, $41 if you have a motorbike. Thumbs up to the bike riders out there. So that's the first suggestion. Fairly easy to understand. The second suggestion here is about stamp duty. The relevance here is about house prices. So there's a lot of debate about house prices. It is a dastardly topic. It is quite a difficult one to be able to solve quickly or easily. And this isn't going to automatically solve all your problems. It's I would suggest just one small step in the right direction, one affordable step in the right direction. Now, one of the things that goes to the price of houses that we buy on the market now, most of which aren't new houses, you're buying houses already there. One of the costs that go into that price is the cost of building new houses. So the cost of building new houses is an element, and one of the costs of building new houses is the stamp duty. Well, one of the costs of buying a newly built house is that stamp duty. So one thing we can do here is, if we want to encourage those new houses, we can remove the stamp duty from those new houses. Now, you see a lot of discussion. Liberal and Labor both talk about removing stamp duty for first home buyers. Now, that's not this idea. This is a different idea. First home buyers, that's about the person. What I'm suggesting here is it's about the house. What we need is more housing supply, more houses available. That benefits everyone in the long run, including first home buyers. But if you want to get house prices down, if you want to get rents down, there literally just has to be more houses for people to live in, or fewer people, or both, right? But I mean, put the immigration question aside, because even if you cut immigration, you would still get even more cheaper housing if you could get more housing out there. So whichever way you slice it, more housing is a good idea here. So instead of targeting people who are getting their first house, we want to be targeting the building of first houses, like the new houses. So that's what this does. Stamp duty should be entirely removed for people who are buying a newly built home. And then the next part of that question is, well, who are we trying to make housing more affordable to? Mostly to people who can't afford housing. So what we need is more affordable housing. Now, building fancy, expensive housing still does help, because rich people move into that, middle income can move into the rich person's old house, and a poor person can move. It's still an extra house. So I'm not decrying the relevance of people building a fancy house. But most of what we want here is to encourage the building of more affordable housing. So what I'm suggesting is remove stamp duty entirely on newly built houses, regardless of who's buying it. It could be your second house, your third house, regardless of who's buying it. Because if it's your fourth house and you're renting it out, that's an extra rental available to help put downward pressure on rents. Right? So regardless of who's buying it, remove the stamp duty on newly built houses if they are up to the level of the average house price. And what that does is it incentivizes builders to build a few more houses. It incentivizes them to build the houses that are below the average house price. So that creates more supply at that bottom end. And one of the problems sometimes with encouraging more development well, one of the problems with pushing down the price of development sometimes is, well, that's going to send the developers broke, and if the developers are broke, they can't develop. This doesn't hurt the developers as well. So it's kind of a win-win-win. Lower prices, lower rents, more house supply, and the developers still get, the builders still get work. So that's this idea. Now, the Liberal Party has introduced a watered-down version of this, but they're just talking about removing stamp duty for new houses if it's your first house. And there's no reason, I understand why that's politically appealing, but the goal here isn't if it's your first house, it's to get the house price down, which means we need more houses built. So this is all about incentivizing the building of more affordable housing. The third policy here, so now we're switching up to a business tax, payroll tax, and the idea number 3, we're at, maybe I should move number 2 off the top so you don't get distracted. Of course you wouldn't get distracted. Why should I say such a thing? So the third one here is no payroll tax for small business. Now, it'd be nice to just say no payroll tax, but I'm trying to be pragmatic, reasonable, make this affordable inside a budget for a major party. So what we're doing here is we're trying to free up small and new businesses from the payroll tax system. And look, one of the problems with the payroll tax system is it's just so complicated and dastardly to get involved in. But for companies that are below the threshold, they don't have to get involved at all. They can sidestep the entirety of payroll tax. It's not a relevant tax for them. So this isn't an issue. I'm not talking here about cutting the rates. I'm just saying let's make more small businesses entirely exempt from the payroll tax system. And now, there is some method to the madness. Here, it's not just helping small businesses because we like small businesses, although we do, but really new businesses, small and new businesses are the lifeblood of the competitive pressures in an economy. Big businesses, most big businesses started as small businesses that were successful. You have to be able to see a constant stream of new businesses entering the market, and they often enter as small businesses, and if they're good, they grow. But what you really need to make sure in any competitive market, for it to be a well-functioning competitive market, is what we call low barriers to entry, i.e. it's easy to enter the market. So it is quite important for the proper functioning of the market that small businesses aren't strangled at birth. And there are a lot of regulations and a lot of taxes in Australia, over 100 taxes and more regulations than anyone human would ever be able to read. So big businesses are able to navigate those relatively better than small businesses. It makes some sense here that we try to lighten the load on small businesses to make it easier for new businesses to start, and then there's going to be that constant competitive pressure, hopefully making those markets more efficient, therefore driving prices down. So that's going to encourage innovation, it's going to encourage lower prices, it's going to encourage higher productivity because you're getting the competitive pressure from more small businesses. So I'm suggesting here up to a $2 million payroll threshold. It's currently 1.3 million, so this is a significant jump. But it is quite an achievable level. 2 million is the equal highest in Australia. So that's the rate in the ACT at the moment. That's quite achievable. And that just means a lot more of these small businesses are entirely exempt from the payroll tax system, which I think would be both economically efficient and productivity enhancing, and also quite a fair measure, right? This isn't a handout to the big end of town. This is very much helping the small businesses. And the last point here, point 4, also about payroll tax. This one gets a little nerdy. I think it's interesting because I'm a weirdo, but it's it might be harder to sell. Our current payroll tax system in Queensland is quite complicated. It's quite batty, really. We actually have higher marginal payroll taxes for medium-sized businesses than for large businesses. That seems strange, but I'll repeat that, right? So a very small business pays no payroll tax, and then if you're a bit bigger, you pay at 4.75. I'll check these in a second. And then you'd think, as the big businesses get bigger, what most states do is they charge a slightly higher payroll tax rate for the bigger businesses. That's not quite what we do in Queensland. We start at a low rate, then it goes up really high for medium-sized businesses, and then it comes down again. So we have the highest marginal payroll tax paid in Australia, or in Queensland, is for those medium-sized businesses, which is just a silly way to do things. I mean, it's inefficient, it's unfair. So the suggestion here is, this isn't a slash and burn. I'd love to slash and burn taxes, but that's not what I'm suggesting here. It's just, let's fix this anomaly, take away the regressive element, and introduce a fairly modest cut to the marginal payroll tax for these medium-sized businesses. It would amount to about a 0.7% tax cut. And the way you do that is you just take away the thing that's causing the anomaly. So the anomaly is caused by the fact that the payroll tax threshold is removed slowly. So just don't remove the threshold. If you don't remove the threshold, that decreases the effective marginal tax rate for medium-sized businesses. And so you can fix that problem, and it amounts to about a 0.7% payroll tax cut for medium-sized businesses. And so that would be, yeah, efficiency enhancing, but also just fundamentally a fairer system, that you don't have the highest tax rates applying to the medium-sized businesses, which it is a batty. That system is only sustained because it's not properly understood. If people properly understood how the marginal payroll tax system works, it would have been overturned years ago. But because it's so complicated and sort of hard for people to see through, the bureaucracy is able to get away with maintaining a pretty stupid tax for a long time, because who else besides me would try to make you listen to a talk about the nuances of removing thresholds on payroll tax for medium-sized businesses? But if you are listening, then I thank you for your indulgence and tolerance. And hopefully we could lean on a couple of major parties to make this eminently sensible, efficiency enhancing and fair change. So all four of them, I say, would be put in that category. So that is the agenda we have put forward. That is something that I think it's got parts there. I think all of it could be quite easily embraced by either major party. We've got stamp duty coming down with a purpose of building more affordable housing. We've got payroll tax coming down, but it coming down primarily to make it easier for small businesses and make it fairer for medium-sized businesses vis-a-vis the large businesses. And you've got car rego, keeping that low, because that was one of the actually good changes that Labor brought in earlier this year, but they brought it in for only a year. Let's keep it. So that's the pitch. Even if the major parties don't embrace all four, it would be great to see them at least diving into some of this discussion and going past the talking points and the vague motherhood statements and the sort of cheap gimmicks and short-term handouts. I mean, these are actual policy reforms that would make public policy more rational, more logical, more efficient. So it would be nice to see them, even if they're not fully embraced by the major parties, maybe partially embraced or at least discussed, or maybe they can come up with something better. I mean, let's have the policy discussion and have someone outbid this. Let's have someone improve on this. And that would be nice to see. Maybe I'm being a little bit overly hopeful, but, being white-pilled, let's try to make the change we want to see in the world. So the Australian Taxpayers Alliance is calling on both major parties to accept these four changes and commit to putting them in place within the first year of the next government. Because it's very easy to say, yeah, we'll do it someday. We'll have a review about a review and we'll talk to a guy, et cetera, but commit to doing it. And if both of them commit, we're going to have the best case scenario here for the people of Queensland. We have guaranteed improvement in our public policy, lower taxes, more efficiency, more fairness. And I would argue that if one party doesn't want to take up these policies, that's a great political opportunity. And I understand the rationale for Labor is just cheap gimmicks and handouts. Liberals, keep your head down, don't say anything. But I think these policies do stand on their own merit and would be politically popular. So there's a political opportunity. So both for the good of the state, the good of public policy, for the good of their future government, and for their naked political self-interest, I implore the major parties to commit now to introducing these four substantive but pragmatic and affordable tax cuts for Queensland. And if you agree, please go to the website taxpayers.org.au/QLD tax. Sign up so you can keep up to date with the campaign. We're going to be trying to slowly ramp up the pressure on the politicians, Queensland politicians. I'm going to be getting in touch with the Queensland political parties, big and small, and the independents. I'm going to be sending them this outline for a tax cutting agenda for Queensland, trying to get them on the record. We'll be showing you on our website which politicians have agreed to go forward with this tax cutting agenda, which ones haven't, which ones refuse to answer. And hopefully you out there, if you're listening to this and you agree, can join in by pestering your local candidates and MPs and encourage them to get behind ATA Cut These Taxes campaign. So with that being said, I did put out an offer for anyone who's walking past to jump into the room. I either have done that wrong or I have failed to entice you to come and join me on the stage. next time, inshallah. So having said all that, I will now sign off. If this gets any traction, I will do these more regularly. And in the meantime, look out for that campaign, ATA campaign, cut these taxes. That's it from me. Thank you.
Hey DJ, what do you think of the budget?
Budget naughty.
Yeah, budget naughty.